And those feelings that are just marinating in your mind that are negative are now leeching your energy, like literally sucking the life force out of you. So, which then to escape those feelings, to numb those feelings, then what do you besides turning to drugs or alcohol, you might turn to buying. Burnout. Once you hit the edge, you are in trouble. And it's so much harder to recover from burnout than to prevent burnout. And so today I'm going to break down the 11 major signs you might be on the edge of burnout. And when you're there, you want to take action immediately because you don't have time to waste. And if you fall off the cliff and you really hit burnout, sometimes it takes years for people to recover. And I'm also going to give you a few tips on how to recover fast. But first, let's dive in and let's take a look at the 11 major signs of burnout. So, sign number 1 that you are on the edge of burnout is you are easily angered. Okay, so when you're easily angered or cynical about life, guess what? You are potentially on the edge of burnout. And burnout is basically where you are just running out of fumes. You have nothing left in the gas tank. And if you stay on the edge of fumes, guess what? Then other parts of your body and your nervous system start breaking down. You can develop autoimmune diseases. You can just develop that zest or lose that zest for life and end up losing your job, losing your marriage, losing your family just because you are slogging through life instead of bringing zest and spice and energy and pep to your step, right? So also, if you are experiencing the first sign, which is the easily angered, guess what? If you are easily angered or more cynical, then you know what? You are clearly negatively impacting the people around you, and you might have gone from a positive person and a joyful person to be around to a negative person to be around, and someone that others will run away from and avoid like the plague. Because hey, who wants to be around someone who's always cranky and grumpy or cynical and negative about life, right? So you got to pay attention to these. And again, I'm going to give you some steps to recover rapidly from burnout. But first, we got to identify if you are on the edge of burnout. And I see it over and over with a lot of my high-performing leaders and CEOs and business owners. And so that's why I want to break that down more deeply today. The second major sign is you are having trouble sleeping. So not only might you be experiencing increased levels of anger, but you might be having trouble sleeping, which means your mind can never shut off, but it's never like fully on either, which is kind of the third one, which we'll talk about in a sec. But because your mind is always racing and restless, you cannot just let go. And you might be bringing work or your stress factors or relational challenges into your bedroom, right? Meaning as you're about to sleep, you're ruminating, you're marinating on those things, and your mind just can't shut off. And if you have prolonged difficulty sleeping, then other things, like you literally can't think as well. Your hormones don't reset. Your brain doesn't basically clear out the waste. That's why you get brain fog and other things. Because sleep is a major activity for your brain to clear out basically the neurotoxins. And then you're also not healing. You're physically probably getting more and more inflamed. So like difficulty sleeping is a major issue. All right. You don't want to linger too long on that. 2 books I should recommend. Nobody Sleeps by my friend Bejoy, Dr. Bejoy. I forgot his last name off the cuff. And then Dr. Matthew Walker wrote Why We Sleep. So definitely want to check those out. And then there's some other tools you'll look at to optimize your sleep, which I won't go into fully today, but looking at like blue light glasses and different supplements as well. But the third major sign that you are on the edge of burnout is cognitive difficulty or brain fog. And this is where you're just not thinking as clearly. You can't put sentences together as coherently and powerfully, and you kind of are struggling and stumbling, and it just feels like, man, you're misfiring. Right? I don't know if you've been there, but when you're misfiring in your brain, it is not a good experience. It sucks. Okay. And you just don't feel as sharp. You feel like you've aged in some regards. And then that leads into the fourth problem, which is the increased use of either drugs such as alcohol or other stimulants, or caffeine is another stimulant that you might just keep inching it up, trying to get through the day, and no longer did like 2 cups of coffee get you by, now it's 3 or 4 or whatever, right? But then it throws off your adrenals, and then it exacerbates the problem over the long term. But you see people that just live in this increased state of stimulation. They take their uppers and then they take their downers, all right? And then guess what? Your nervous system is never fully healing, resetting, and getting into a restored optimal energy state. So that fourth one, increased or excessive use of drugs, alcohol, or other stimulants, is a big one. Now the fifth one is just this feeling of loss of motivation, like you're just dragging. You don't want to get out of bed. Starting new projects is like dreadful. You can't even finish projects maybe as well. So this loss of motivation is a telltale sign that, hey, you might be on the edge of burnout, all right? Where you just kind of are not, you don't have the inner drive to complete or start or activate yourself. It might even feel like loss of motivation. Going to the gym feels tedious. Seeing friends that you used to see and enjoy being around feels really tedious. Going for a walk just feels, why would I go for a walk? I don't just want to stay in and rest. Well, you stay in that cycle, guess what? It's going to perpetuate, and we got to basically recover from that. We'll talk more about that. But then the sixth one is you might have perpetual or repeated feelings of failure, just like you suck. Those thoughts are ringing in your head. I suck. I can't do anything. I might as well give up. This is not going to work. I'm going to boom, 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 whatever it may be. And those feelings that are just marinating in your mind that are negative are now leeching your energy, like literally sucking the life force out of you. So, which then to escape those feelings, to numb those feelings, then what do you besides turning to drugs or alcohol, you might turn to buying, shopping, and which is the seventh one, spending a lot of money on things you don't need. This, you might find yourself on Amazon or Nordstrom's or wherever, just buying and buying and buying. It could be little things, but you're just buying stuff you really don't need, and it's an emotional, unconscious decision. It can be food as well, right? Which is the eighth one, overeating or undereating. When you're in that cycle and you're on the edge of burnout, you're probably going to be overeating or undereating to compensate emotionally for where you're just slogging it through. You're just struggling, okay? And we use food as a way to emotionally numb ourselves lots of times. And then the ninth one is might have increased conflict in your relationship. So meaning more difficulty in relationships. That might be a romantic relationship, might be your kids, might be your parents, whatever it might be, boss. I have another client. It's like he's struggling. He's an executive in this company, but guess what? He's struggling with his relationship with his boss, and he's just been in a little bit of a spiral. So we're working on getting him out of that spiral. But pay attention to that. If you have unusually high levels of conflict, it might be a sign you're on the edge of burnout, where you're just a little acrimonious or difficult to get along with. 10th sign, this is a major one, is significant physical illness or fatigue. If you notice that, my energy levels are just slumping down. Like I had one client that was definitely on the edge of burnout, and now 1 month later she's far from the edge. She's not all the way recovered, but she's far from the edge, which is where we want her to be. But guess what? She already has an autoimmune disease. She was, as we did our private session, she realized, the name for the version of her that was showing up that day was Slumpy. And Slumpy was just so tired and could not think and could not operate. And so when you're in this deep state of fatigue, guess what? Everything's going to suffer. And it's going to be prolonged if you don't take radical action fast. All right, so we'll talk more about the actions to take to reboot yourself physically here in a moment. But I want to go through the 11th sign that you might be on the edge of burnout, which could be suicidal thoughts. All right, now burnout can also lead to depression, and depression can be a reflection of burnout. So you want to pay attention to that and be observant of that. But suicidal thoughts is not something to deal with lightly, and call a suicide hotline if you need to, if you are truly struggling in that deep state, or call a loved one or friend that really is there for you, okay? Don't let that linger. That's a sign that you need to do something, okay? So In the next segment, I want to cover how do we recover or treat burnout so that we get rebooted? How do we get on the other edge of burnout and feel great again? And how long does it take, right? That's what we're going to cover in the next video, so stay tuned. I'm going to break that down in just a moment.